What's Wrong with the World by G.K. Chesterton. Publisher's Introduction. Thank you for picking up a copy of What's Wrong with the World by G.K. Chesterton. We have updated this work into modern English so you can understand exactly what Chesterton wrote over 100 years ago. We encourage you to refer to the original writing as you listen to this updated work. If you enjoy this book, please share with a friend, leave a positive review on Amazon, and see more updated works at oldbooknew.com. To CFG Masterman, Member of Parliament. Dear Charles, I first named this book, What is Wrong, and it would have amused you to see how many social misunderstandings came from that title. Many polite ladies were surprised when I casually mentioned, I've been working on What is Wrong all morning, and one minister seemed quite startled when I told him, as he understood it, that I had to quickly go upstairs to do what was wrong, but I'd be back in a minute. I can't guess what secret wrongdoing they thought I was up to, but I know what I blame myself for, writing a very disorganized and inadequate book, one that doesn't deserve to be dedicated to you. In terms of literature, this book is what's wrong, without a doubt. It might seem incredibly bold to give such a wild piece of writing to someone who has captured a few truly impressive scenes of England's bustling crowds. And you're the only person who can make the map of England come alive, which is both amazing and enviable. So why should I bother you with a book that, even if it succeeds, which is highly unlikely, can only be a loud rush of ideas? I do it partly because I think you politicians aren't any worse off with a few challenging ideals, but mostly because you'll remember the many debates we've had, those debates that the most amazing women in the world can't stand for too long. And maybe you'll agree with me that the bond of friendship and conversation needs to be protected because it's so fragile. It must be cherished and not broken because it's not worth trying to fix once it's snapped. It's precisely because arguing is pointless that men, I mean males, need to take it seriously, because when else, we wonder, until the end of time, will we have such an enjoyable disagreement again? But most importantly, I offer it to you because there's not only camaraderie, but something very different called friendship, an understanding beneath all the arguments in a bond that, God willing, will never break. Always yours, G.K. Chesterton. Chapter 1. The Homelessness of Man. 1. The Medical Mistake. A modern book on social issues usually has a clear structure. It typically starts with an analysis, including statistics, population tables, decrease of crime among Congregationalists, increase of stress among policemen, and similar established facts. It ends with a chapter often titled The Solution. This careful, solid, and scientific approach is mostly why the solution is never discovered. This method of diagnosing and then treating is a mistake. It's the first big mistake in sociology. People always say we need to identify the problem before we find the solution. But the true nature and importance of humans in social matters is that we often need to find the solution before we fully understand the problem. This mistake is one of many that come from the modern obsession with using biological or physical metaphors. It's easy to talk about the social organism, just like it's easy to talk about the British lion. But Britain isn't an organism any more than it's a lion. When we start thinking of a nation as simple and unified like an animal, we start thinking irrationally. Just because every person has 2 legs doesn't mean 50 people make a centipede. This kind of thinking leads to the ridiculous idea of talking about young nations and dying nations, as if a nation has a set physical lifespan. People might say Spain is in its final old age. They might as well say Spain is losing all its teeth. Or they might say Canada should soon create a literature, which is like saying Canada must soon grow a new mustache. Nations are made up of people. The first generation might be weak, or the 10,000th might be strong. Similar mistakes are made by those who think that as a nation gets bigger, it automatically gets wiser and more favored by God and people. These folks don't even consider whether an empire is growing taller in its youth or just getting fatter in its old age. But the worst mistake from this kind of thinking is what we have here: the habit of thoroughly describing a social problem and then suggesting a social cure. Terrifying. When we talk about illness in cases of physical breakdown, we do so for a very good reason. Even though there might be uncertainty about how the body broke down, there's no doubt about how it should be fixed. No doctor suggests creating a new type of person with a different arrangement of eyes or limbs. A hospital might have to send someone home with one less leg, but it won't send them home with an extra leg. Medical science is satisfied with the normal human body and only aims to restore it to that state. Social science doesn't always stick to the usual human nature. It offers all kinds of different ideals. A person with social ideals might say, I'm tired of being strict and moral. I want to be more carefree. Or, after going through this tough time of focusing on myself, I see a bright future in working together as a community. In physical health issues, there's no debate about the ultimate goal. A patient might not want quinoline, but they definitely want to be healthy. No one says, I'm tired of this headache, I want a toothache. Or, the best cure for this Russian flu is to catch some German measles. Or, after suffering from a cold, I see the bright future of having rheumatism. The real challenge in our public issues is that some people are aiming for solutions that others think are worse problems. They're offering end goals as healthy states that others would clearly call unhealthy. Mr. Belloc once said he wouldn't give up the idea of owning property any more than he'd give up his teeth. Yet to Mr. Bernard Shaw, property isn't like a tooth, but more like a toothache. Lord Milner has genuinely tried to bring in German efficiency, and many of us would rather have German measles. Dr. Salibi genuinely wants eugenics, but I'd prefer to have rheumatism. The striking and main point about modern social discussions is that the argument isn't just about the problems, but about the goal. We all agree on what's bad, it's about what's good that we would fiercely argue. We all agree that a lazy aristocracy is bad, but not all of us would agree that an active aristocracy is good. We all get upset with a non-religious priesthood, but some of us would be even more upset with a truly religious one. Everyone is angry if our army is weak, including those who would be even angrier if it were strong. The social situation is the opposite of the medical one. We don't disagree like doctors about the exact nature of the illness while agreeing on what health is. Instead, we all agree that England is unhealthy, but half of us wouldn't see her in what the other half would call perfect health. Public problems are so obvious and harmful that they bring all well-meaning people into a sort of false agreement. We forget that while we agree on the problems, we would disagree a lot about their solutions. Mr. Cadbury and I would agree about the bad pub. It would be right in front of the good pub where our heated argument would happen. I believe that the usual way of studying society is not helpful, like examining extreme poverty or listing instances of prostitution. We all dislike extreme poverty, but it might be different if we talked about poverty that is independent and dignified. We all disapprove of prostitution, but not everyone agrees on what purity means.